scrambled them. First, we will have an introduction, and that will be 2 minutes for each candidate. And then each one of the questions will have a 1-minute response. And if any of you candidates have a burning desire to have a rebuttal, then we'll give you 30 seconds. When we did this last year for the legislature and the county commissioners, they didn't ask for 30 seconds too often, but I can see how sometimes you might just want to say, look, I need to give my 2 cents worth. So you're welcome to ask for 30 seconds if you feel like you need it at the end of the question. Not at the end of something somebody said, but when the question is completed by all 4 candidates, then you can ask for 30 seconds if you want. And then you'll have a minute for your closing remarks. So we'll get started with Mike Caldwell will take 2 minutes to introduce himself, and then Angela Castillo. Angel.
Angel.
Oh, I messed it up already. Okay.
You bought an extra bottle.
I made one mistake last night, Angel, so hopefully that'll be the only mistake I make tonight. So we'll first hear from Mike Caldwell, then Angel Castillo, and then from Dan Tavish, and then John Thompson, in that order, 2 minutes each.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter. And having attended classes here in the early 90s, this is a huge upgrade. So I appreciate what you guys are doing. Appreciate y'all being here. Appreciate the legislature getting involved and helping to fund this. I also want to thank the candidates. For those that haven't put their name on a ballot before and asked for your vote and your support, it's one of the hardest, scariest things you can do. So huge props to Angel, Daniel, and John for putting yourselves out there, and I look forward to sharing some ideas with you tonight. It is a really unique thing to do. One of the reasons I'm running for, again, and I'll quickly just say there are 3 others in the room that I counted. Councilman Nadolski, Councilman Stevens, and I saw one other, Lopez in the back. Thank you for being here. It's the Flaming Lips tonight. We'll have 8,000 people downtown. It's one of the most popular concerts we have in the Twilight series. So you guys all taking the time to be here, putting on your suit and ties, and having to listen to all of this. Props to you all. One of the reasons I ran for mayor the first time was because I grew up in Ogden. I went to Weber State University. I graduated in the early 90s. When I drive down 25th Street in the early 90s, you just roll up the windows and lock the doors and kind of peer over the door jam because there was not a lot happening downtown. And one of the most amazing things when I worked for the Olympic Committee back in 2002 games was we had 106,000 people that came downtown to see what was going on and to celebrate our community. That hadn't happened in my lifetime, and we're starting to see that happen now. I love this community. I've been involved in all kinds of different boards and organizations here. When the Olympics ended, I founded the Goal Foundation, which produces the marathon and we had the Dew Tour and a whole bunch of other things. We had 3,000 people that volunteered during the games that wanted to know what's next. What do we do next? A lot of people in this room, I'm looking around, I see a lot of familiar faces, have shown up at 3 in the morning to schlep barricades and to get involved. It's leadership that matters, and it's how we embrace and go after this community. We will have, this year alone, over 200,000 people that come downtown to either go to our concert series or anything else, and that leadership really matters. Connecting with our community really matters, and that's something I've done for well over 20 years. Is that the?
Yeah.
That's right here. Okay, that's something I really want to continue. It's something I'm really passionate about, and I appreciate you all being here. Your being here reflects that you want to be involved in what's happening in the community, and I totally celebrate that. So thank you all very much.
Hello, everybody. I'm Angel Castillo, and I am running for Ogden Mayor. I am an Ogden City Planning Commissioner, and that's a unsung hero sort of job. It's mostly volunteer. We just got a small stipend. But the long and the short of it is it's a role that's very important to decide where things go and how we expand. I am not from Ogden. I chose to be here. I came here in 2014 for the USA Cycling Masters Nationals. I was racing, and I fell in love with the town. I fell in love with the people who were warm and open and friendly, and I never knew I could be emotional about mountains until I saw them. and it's something extraordinarily special. And I went home, and I wouldn't shut up about moving to Ogden. And the only reason my fiance and I didn't move back to Ogden that very same year is we had to wait for a commercial lease to expire. But I was all in from the moment I was here, and my fiance was sold in about 8 hours. And the reason that I'm running is I want to address housing affordability, I want to address public safety, and I want to address education, and that's a lot. But the reason I joined the Planning Commission and why it's important to me as far as affordable rental housing goes, I came from a place with a housing crisis. I came from a place with a homeless crisis. I do not want that happening here, not on my watch. And so I am doing everything that I can to make sure that I connect with the community and talk to people and find out what they need. I'm a marketing consultant. I've been a marketing consultant for over 10 years, and I get hired to solve people's problems. They bring me in when their sales are flat. But here's the secret about being a marketing consultant. It's all about communication. When I go to a job and a client, I talk to everybody, from the janitor to the filing clerk, from the president to the vice president, because you can only solve problems when you involve an entire community. And that's what I think is lacking here in Ogden, a connection to the community from the administration. And when I'm elected, I pledge to hold a town hall every quarter, because what you say is important to me. Your voice is important to me. Thank you.
Hi everybody, thanks for coming out. I want to thank Weaver State and Olin Walker Institute for putting this up for us today. Bob for organizing this. I'm sure you had a big hand in that, so thank you. Everyone that came out on your busy night, I'm sure you had family things you could do, so come listen to a bunch of politicians talk. Can't be the greatest thing, but appreciate your time. Anyway, the reason I'm involved in this is Ogden's facing some challenges, serious in my book. We have anemic economic growth, we have high taxes, and our violent crimes in the city have been growing. So I've got a plan to change that. I'd like to bring in businesses to help with the anemic economy. I'd like to work with the police force, get our community policing rallied around walking the beat, help lowering crime, and then also try and lower taxes once we get the economy rolling. We can bring in businesses very easily just by recruiting heavily. There's businesses that have wanted to come, but certain obstacles with red tape that's existing in the politics right now. We've got to get rid of those and bring those businesses here to Ogden. Anyway, I'm not going to take 2 minutes because I'm not a seasoned politician yet, so I'll let the rest of them talk.
Good evening, everyone, and also thanks for being here, and Bob and your crew, thanks for hosting this. I grew up, well, I moved to Ogden in 1961, graduated from Ogden High last century, not quite as old as Bob, but close, and went to Weaver State when this, I think, was one of the buildings that occupied those 4 single-story ones, so that's how far we go back. Unfortunately, I majored in a fraternity and minored in a sorority. Also, all my good friends, mostly, or all of them, LDS types, went on their mission, and little 17-year-old Johnny had nothing to do, so what did my older brother convince me to do? Join a gun club. The name of that gun club was called the United States Marine Corps. So that worked out okay on both counts. One, I'm still married to that sorority lady for 51 or so years. And 2, after I got out the first time, I went back in, made it a career, and after 20 or so years, decided to retire. I have been to different countries, but we chose, now she's in charge, to come back to Ogden. So I love this place. Look at the mountains, look at the snow, look at the green. It was great. So my mom also taught me to serve, to give back to the community, protect people. There are not any bullies here in Ogden, but to serve. So that's the reason I'm running. And I think I can order a fresh set of eyes on what's going on here. I live in a great neighborhood. I don't really have the feeling that there are really many problems, but I always think that we can improve what we're doing. And that's what I'd like to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, on the questions, I'm glad that you all applauded for our candidates, and again, we're pleased that they are sacrificing what they are in order to run for office, but let's not applaud on the question answers, but at the end, we'll give them all a nice thank you for coming and making their presentations. So the first question is, I sent out a keepers today. I sent out an inspirational quote to about 500 people every day. Some of you receive it, some of you do not. If you'd like to, you can talk to me after. But one of the things that I read today ties in with the first question. It is, authenticity requires a certain measure of vulnerability, transparency, and integrity. So the question is, and we'll start with Angela, how can we engage the community in an authentically transparent way?
Excellent question. I'm actually going to defer to something that the City Council has decided to take on their own initiative, and it's something that I think probably should have happened from an administrative standpoint. If you didn't know it, your City Council paid for an outreach program to find out what everybody wants and needs. You could participate online, you could go to a public session. I believe that we need to have that on a regular basis. And I believe that needs to be through town halls. And when I say town halls, I don't mean, hey, you've got 3 minutes at City Council where everybody sits up on a dais and you're really on the low level and it feels really weird and it's uncomfortable. I'm talking about in a room with a table, things recorded so that we can track them, but an actual conversation between a mayor and the people that are a part of the community, because you can't possibly expect to be effective as a leader without knowing what your troops want. What are the different wants and needs? And what people on the East Bench want are very different than what people on East Central want. And we need, and that's why we have separate City Council members for each of them to represent those needs and to bring a voice to the table. So that's how I would start, with having regular interaction through an official town hall and being on the boots on the ground and available. Thank you.
Thank you. Dan, how can we engage the community in an authentically transparent way?
Well, a couple different things we could do. The first thing would be to have an open door policy for the mayor's office. Seems like about 8 years ago, that was an open door policy. And as a business owner, if I needed to talk to the mayor, I could reach him, I could walk in, get up to his office. He did have somebody there at the door to stop me, so I couldn't walk right on in. But he'd give me 5 minutes if I needed it, and I took advantage of being able to have that open door policy. Another thing we could do is, with our community policing, is have the men and women in blue out walking their beat and becoming more part of the community. You're walking around, you're talking to people in their yards, asking them how things are going. I think you can connect with the community more, and I think that's very important to help lower crime as well as understanding what's happening in the community.
Thank you. John?
Can you repeat the question?
How can we engage the community in an authentically transparent way?
Okay. I've had complaints with the city, or basically I've learned in my years to maybe ask just a question first before you make it a complaint. All of those complaints were satisfactorily resolved either by the administration or by a council member, and I commend both sides for that. In that regard, I think there are many, many things that are being discussed that we don't know about, that the office people, the police department, or the community and economic development, or the parks, or public works might be doing, you really don't find out about that until you go to the council meeting when that decision is going to be made or voted on to be implemented. So I would start right off the bat on that, is trying to have some other type of update, if it's not monthly, maybe quarterly or so, that goes out with the utility bill to say, this is what is going on in Ogden, and here's a point of contact that you can come and contact if you have concerns or interest in it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mike, how can we engage the community?
I would say in 8 years in this office, I haven't closed my office door once. I've met with a number of different people in this room, and we sit on all kinds of boards and other groups that talk to us regularly. One of the things I kind of tongue-in-cheek talk about all the time is that when I introduce myself, I say I'm the primary complaint department for Ogden City, because a lot of that does come to us, and we work hard on that. One of the things that I'm extremely proud of is that in the last year, the Ogden City Police Department has reduced Part 1 crime by 20%. And it is by walking the beat and doing different things. Chief Randy Watt has done an amazing job in recognizing how we proactively police our communities, how we reach out to our neighborhoods, how we understand what's going on. And I would say that there hasn't been a more responsive administration when those things come up than we have currently. I'm really proud of the work that they've done. One of the challenges we have, not just in Ogden, but across the entire Wasatch Front, is that there are 600 open positions in law enforcement. And so how do you fund that? How do you take care of that? How do you open those conversations and keep people invested and involved in what's happening in their neighborhoods and communities? You all have a bigger influence than anybody recognizes in calling in, talking about it, and reporting what you're seeing. So that's part of how we keep that dialogue going and how we proactively take care of our community and make it safe.
Thank you. That's the end of the first question. The second question, Dan, is what is your understanding of race relations in our city, and what is your plan to address it?
Well, I haven't noticed any major race relation issues in Ogden. I'm in downtown Ogden on a regular basis. I have investment properties where I go door to door to talk to my tenants, and I'm in those neighborhoods on a regular basis where there's every race you can think of in downtown Ogden, and neighbors are happy. They hang out together. I haven't witnessed any race relation problems myself, so if there is a problem, I address it immediately and step in. But at this point in time, I don't see it as a problem.
Thank you. Angel, how would you address race relations in our city, and what is your understanding of that?
Well, first I'd like to point out that I believe Mr. Tavish is completely wrong in the fact that we do not have race relation problems. I've held meetings with Black Lives Matters. I've been to an NAACP meeting, and at those meetings I have heard fear. We still have young Black women in this community that are afraid that people are going to hurt them, that they're being discriminated on a regular basis. And I know this because I'm in the community, and I've been talking to those groups, asking them what it is that they need. And what those groups want and what those groups need is connection. And while it's been referred to that we do have some foot patrols, we are sorely remiss in having foot patrols in the communities that need us the most in East Central. And the reason, when I've spoken to Chief Watt and I've spoken to other officers, the reason that we don't have them is that we don't have enough officers. Our officers work really, really hard, and they're paid between $7 to $10 less than Salt Lake City. We're losing officers at an alarming rate. And in order to make sure that we can connect with those communities, we're going to have to come together as a community, operate on some free resources from the NAACP for mediation, and begin to make that bridge and heal our communities of color in connection with the rest of our population so we can continue to grow as a city.
Thank you. John, race relations.
I am not aware of any problem with race relations in the city, and I hope that is true, and therefore I also hope that remains true. If it does come about, I don't think there's any excuse or reason for it, and especially if it's done by a city official or an employee, it should be addressed immediately, because in this city, state, and country, that is not what the founding fathers had originally intended for us to do. We have to treat everybody as an individual, regardless of their race, their culture, their background, or anything else that might pertain in that area. So, again, I hope it's not a problem, but if it ever does become one, it should be addressed immediately.
Thank you. Mike?
This year, the Ogden School District just went over 50% in terms of its diversity level. And so that's something that we have recognized, and we put an officer of diversity in my office on the 9th floor. We have a diversity commission, and we have a diversity officer in the Ogden City Police Department. They're all bilingual, they're all looking to bring more voices together and to hear more of what's happening in our community. We've been very proactive in recognizing that and trying to serve those diverse populations. Far more so than has happened in the past, and that's something that we expect to continue. It's critical that all of those people feel like they have a pathway to success in Ogden City. One of the huge initiatives, and I talk with Brad Mortensen all the time, that we were saying is how do we develop our workforce? How do we get kids from the school district level to recognize that they have opportunities in Ogden City where they can advance themselves? Ogden City's been recognized as one of the most mobily, economically mobile communities in the entire United States of America. It's something I'm extremely proud of, and that is bringing all of those voices together and understanding how to communicate to them, and we've done that in a big way. As Thoreau said a number of different times, what you do speaks so loudly I can't hear what you say, and we have done a lot of those initiatives to bring more diverse voices and to listen to them over the last 8 years.
Thank you. Question number 3. How can we support a sustainable safety net for the most vulnerable in our community? This relates a little bit to question 2, but it's more of a broad question about the demographics of our community. John, you're first. How can we support a sustainable safety net for the most vulnerable in our community?
Good question. Yes, I have a lack of words right now. I guess I would first determine, or what I would need to know is some more information on that, on what do we mean by the most vulnerable. And then once that question is answered, you have to ask yourself, or I would ask myself, what is the responsibility of the city in regard to helping those people that fell out or were not included in that safety net? I think you start off, obviously, with safe neighborhoods. You give them a safe environment. If there are helps or if there are needs, whether it be food or housing or education or clothing or whatever, you can have some type of, those type of volunteer organizations to provide that type of help, and the city, I would say, could probably coordinate that. But it gets back to, I think the first thing is that how much does the city want to get involved? Regardless of what you want to do, it's probably going to cost money, and that means it goes to the council, and people are concerned with taxes. So where do you go from there?
Thank you. Mike, sustainability for the most vulnerable.
That's a really dynamic question, and we saw what happened in Salt Lake when you had a whole group, a whole population of people around the Rio Grande area that were the most vulnerable and the most unable to care for themselves, and they kind of came in with a heavy hand and swept them all out. One of the things we've been working on, a big part of that comes from Weaver County. Weaver County does all of the health and human services, and so how do you coordinate what the county serves and what the city does? The city's in a position where we take care of the symptoms for the most part. So when you're having homeless issues and drug and crime related things happening, we take care of the symptoms. The county's in the position with the health department and some other groups to provide treatment and to get people on their feet. We had a meeting just on Tuesday with the county commissioners that came in and talked about what they're doing to bring people out of intergenerational poverty and how they're providing services for families. One of the things we need to do is work with the school district. If the city goes and knocks on somebody's door that's in a vulnerable position, chances are they're not going to answer it. The school district has the best touch with those kids that are most vulnerable and need the most help. And so our working with the school district is critically important in providing the services that the county provides.
Thank you. Dan, sustaining the most vulnerable.
So Ogden City does a fairly good job with this. I'm working with low-income housing for 25 years. We've got Catholic community, local bishops, and we also have a spot, if someone's living paycheck to paycheck, they have one hiccup, they can be evicted. And if Catholic Community Services doesn't step up and help them save their home for that month, a bishop steps in, or maybe neither. If that happens and they do end up homeless, we do have a place down below wall there that if they can go down, they can get on a waiting list, get into an apartment there. Hopefully it's a short period of time and they're back on their feet. I've had multiple people that they've been through the system, they've been evicted, they're coming back around, Catholic communities assisting them, they'll pay 3 months up to 6 months of rent and get them back on their feet. So we have a relatively good program in place. I think the homeless population is at the most risk, and we've done a fairly good job with that, having that housing down below Ogden.
Thank you. Angel, supporting the most vulnerable.
Supporting the most vulnerable is something that we're failing miserably at. I'm a board member at YCC, and I see daily what happens when people encounter a domestic violence situation or a $600 unpaid expense. And we as a city are not interacting with our nonprofits that are doing the good, heavy work that they are. We have nonprofits in our community that are experts at that, but they need some extra guidance. And I believe that a city should support them. A city should take the office of mayor should be able to pull its authority to sit down with the nonprofits, find the common thread that flows through them, which is children, and give them marketing support. It doesn't necessarily mean money. We can provide resources to pool together our nonprofits, write a collective grant, and back it with the city. That's something that it just takes effort. It takes coming together as a community. We have an amazing amount of assets within our community. You all are technically employees of the city if you want to be involved, if you want to be engaged, if you want to make change. And then the number one thing that we can do that other cities are doing that we are not is you can apply for grants to pair a social service worker with a police officer. They walk around with an iPad so they connect them to the services that they need. They're not threatening, they don't have a badge, they don't have a gun. We give them a card with their name that they can call, that they can follow up. We need to be more active in utilizing free resources from the state and the federal government to start addressing our problems of homelessness and of lower income challenges.
Mr. Hunter, I'll take my 30-second rebuttal to that because we have generated hundreds of thousands of dollars of grants to address just that. And we have the largest homeless shelter in the entire state of Utah. So we're doing far more than our fair share compared to every other city along the Wasatch Front. So I think that you all need to be considerate of what that cost is and what we're doing, because we have hit every single state resource and we have generated hundreds of thousands of dollars in grants to help address that, and we're doing far more than anybody else along the Wasatch Front.
And I'd like to second that because I am in the trenches. I'm down with that community that's at most risk, and Ogden City has done a fabulous job with it, so Mike's exactly right on that one.
Anyone else?
Yes, I am also in the trenches, and I don't rent the property. I actually help get them connected to services that they need. And we don't have a single officer walking around with a social worker, which is available through a grant, through state and local, or state and federal government. We are not taking enough steps. I'm not saying that we haven't done anything. I'm saying we're not doing enough.
Thank you. Question number 4. This is you again, John. In your opinion, what percentage of the Ogden City budget should be allocated to community economic development?
That is a very good question. One, what do we mean by economic development? When you have a vacant building, hopefully, I would assume most of those buildings, the property owner is still paying the taxes on. So in regard to the city, is the city an employment agency? Does it go out and recruit the businesses, or is that the owner of the building or other businessmen that's required to try to get somebody in there to fill that building or to get new jobs into the city? I have advocated, as somebody passed me before this started, that I'm the perennial candidate. And in Ogden City, I've always advocated to the effect that I think it would be more important, and I think it's a better investment of our money, that if we went after to improve neighborhoods and other services to make Ogden a desirable place to live first, and then maybe work or work from. I think we would spend more money of those people living in Ogden than we would just by hiring somebody to work here, with whatever that percentage might be that they leave at the end of the day, and most likely are spending their dollars at the areas where they live or are commuting to. That minute goes by fast.
Thank you. Mike, what percentage of the budget do you think should go to community economic?
And I would put a fixed percentage on that. I would say, what is your return on investment? One of the things we've talked about is a lack of revenue to do more road work, more park work, more youth recreation work. I mean, there are we leave the budget season every single year feeling like there are tons of issues and ounces of resources. And so is the solution to slice the pie in ever smaller slices, or how do you look at and measure return on investment? So one of the things that I'm really proud of in Ogden City is we kept our history for the most part. We haven't kept all of it, but we kept a lot of it. And 30 years ago, we had 43 buildings on historic 25th Street, 35 of them were vacant and boarded. 3 years ago, it was rated by the American Planning Association as one of the top 10 streets in America. So how do we keep that history, tell our story, and make sure that we're bringing in good qualified jobs? I don't want to be Lehigh. A lot of people have talked about what's happening south of Salt Lake City. We don't want that. We want to see what's happening here. We want to appreciate our history and what's happening, but you do that through return on investment on those different projects. There's not one fixed percentage that is the magic dollar sign. It's how do we measure what it's going to bring in, how many jobs it's going to provide, and whether we're retaining and celebrating our history.
Thank you. Angel.
I'm not going to give it a percentage, but I am going to talk about some numbers. Last year we spent $17.9 million on developing commercial property, and this year we're going to spend just about another under $20 million. We have a $200 million budget, and half of that goes to public service, police, fire, as it should. But I think that we should, rather than be investing money and acting as a developer, building commercial property, I think that we should be focusing on the just under 19,000 businesses that are already here. Those businesses could benefit from microloans, from grants, and asking the question, what do you need? What do you need to grow your business by 1, 2 employees? Think of the impact that would have. How can we help you as a city get connected to resources and assets to know who you are, where you are right here, stay local. So I believe that economic development does play a part in the city. I'm just saying we take some of those eggs out of the basket that are going out of state and for bigger companies that are out of our city, and we put more of them in the basket right here at home with our own gritty, bootstrapped, startup entrepreneurs.
Thank you. Dan, community and economic development.
Also, I'm not going to put a number on it. Return on investment makes sense, but it depends on what that return on investment is. If you amortize it over a 20-year period, which is what a lot of our TIF investments doing these days, it takes too long for the city to get their money back. So I think we need to reduce that down to 10 years or less if we're trying to attract a new business and spend our dollars to bring them here. EDC Utah, every year we're clamoring to try and bring businesses to Ogden. And if we have that carrot to bring them here, we can bring in good businesses that will help grow the tax base. If we grow the tax base, then that's better for the next business coming in, and the next business, and the next business. You've got to attract a really good business to get 2 or 3 other local businesses to locate next to them. And that's how we grow Ogden.
Thank you. Here is the last question. After serving as mayor for the next 4 years, what would you hope to say will have been your major accomplishments? Starting with Mike.
One of the things we've worked for a decade on is connecting our community. So we're in first quarter of next year on the tee to have the FTA fund almost $100 million bus rapid transit system that comes from our downtown to the university and to the hospitals. One of the things we've worked on is master planning for transportation, creating a walkable, bikeable, active community. I mentioned earlier, right now we have 8,000 people downtown for one of the Twilight concert series. We've created a community people want to come to. We've created a community that is very competitive and very unique along the Wasatch Front. I would expect in 4 more years we're able to get a lot of those projects done, and then I look forward to fishing a lot more and doing some other things. But I do believe when we saw what happened after the 2002 games and the resurgence of our community, the excitement of our community, look at Forbes and all of the different recognitions we've had. CNBC rated us as one of the top 12 boom towns in the United States of America just last year. There's been a lot that's gone on. And I appreciate the economic development question. Right now with EDO, we have over 13 million square feet under roof because of the TIF and the RDA that went on down there, and over 7,000 employees that are there. That is economic development that works, and that's what I'd like to see continue into the future.
Thank you. Dan, looking back on your 4 years as mayor.
I would like to relentlessly recruit businesses to Ogden. Bring those businesses here so we can grow our tax base. That'll give us economic prosperity, true long-term economic prosperity. I'd like to lower crime. I think our violent crimes have gone up over the last 8 years. Some of the other crimes have gone down, but overall violent crimes have gone up. So I'd like to say after 4 years, we've brought crime down to levels where it was 8 years ago. I'd also like to lower taxes like Layton City has done over the last 3 years. They've lowered their taxes 3 times in 3 years. Around the state, everyone is growing. Ogden is 38% below the average of the rest of the state in economic growth. 38% below the average of the rest of the state. That's just unacceptable in my book. So what we need to do is bring in those businesses that can help grow our tax dollars. And after the 4 years, I think I'll be able to say that I've done so.
Thank you. John?
I would hope one of my main accomplishments would be that the word tax would not be used as a bad word anymore. Democracy, as the saying goes, is funded by tax. The key is whether those tax dollars are being spent the way the majority of the public wants it spent, and is the public getting a investment back and worth for what those taxes were spent on. This book, I'm not a good filer and just happened to come upon it, was about taking a taxpayer walk through services and sites of Ogden City from 2000. So if we want stuff, we should be willing to pay for it, whether that is attracting businesses, making Ogden a great place to live, attracting families that want to live here and work outside or preferably inside Ogden. But we have to get rid of that all tax raises are bad philosophy.
Thank you. Did I? Angel. Well, at least I didn't mispronounce it this time.
Right?
Angel, when you look back on your 4 years as mayor, what would you like to see?
When I look back on my 4 years as mayor, I want to know that I live in a town that a nurse can come home from a midnight shift at McCady and take a run and feel completely and utterly safe. I want to live in an Ogden where you can let your teenagers walk home from the movies and not worry about them having to be harassed by a drug dealer or a gangbanger. And the thing that it's going to take to move those forward is fiscal sustainability. And we are not fiscally sustainable right now. What does that mean? Fiscal sustainability means that all of our infrastructure has enough money socked away to fix it. You want to know why we have potholes and streets that are falling apart? It's because we've been putting all the eggs and doing other stuff rather than replacing. Right now, I spoke to the engineering department. There are $20 million worth of sidewalks to be repaired that are at priority. And that's not the streets. I asked for the number on the streets and they're like, oh, I'm gonna have to get back to you on that. So it's not a sexy thing to campaign on, but I'm here to tell you that I'm gonna hire a consultant to come in and do a top to bottom analysis that specializes in doing just that for cities, fiscal sustainability. You can find that particular group on strongtowns.org. It's something that we need to do as a city, and in order to have that vision of safety and prosperity, we're gonna have to figure out how we invest in our infrastructure, and I consider our police department infrastructure.
Thank you. Now, this is your chance to say the last thing you'll say to these people before they get their ballots in the mail and go vote. So, we're going to start with John, and you have 1 minute for your closing remarks.
Thank you very much again for coming tonight. I will offer that besides being an unusual looking candidate, as I've been told more than once, I want to serve Ogden. I am living here because I think it's a good, great place to live. I have nothing but compliments for the current administration and the city council. I just have a different view of things sometimes. I hope to work with the council and improve items, services that are going on in Ogden. I can't give a specific one because I don't have a big burning issue on what those problems might be. But I would give you my undivided attention and service for as long as I'm in office. And to go off the last comment there of my accomplishments, I would hope to say when I leave office, because I'd only like to do it 1 year, I am getting up there a little bit, and the wife would like to spend some other time. She does like to travel, but we always like to come back here. That if you do vote for me, remember that if you don't do it this month, or next month in August, you may not get the chance in November. So when I do leave, saying, thank you for voting for me, he did as good a job as Mayor Caldwell did. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Dan.
You know, when Mike took office, he inherited a city with high job growth, low crime, low taxes. Where are we today? 38% below the average in economic growth. Second highest property tax rate in the state. Double-digit tax raises multiple times over the last 8 years. We should be lowering taxes like Layton City has done over the last 3 years. 3 different times in 3 years. Our city management team will pick the CAO out. His salary is $247,000 last year. That's more than the governor makes. Governor of the state of Utah makes less than our CAO. We've got a lot of things that we need to do to help the city. I think I've got good ideas to do that. I want to step in, lower taxes, increase economic profitability, and lower crime. Those 3 things we can tackle. There's going to be a lot of other things on the table like potholes, and if we have economic prosperity, we can pay for those potholes. Anyway, thank you for coming out. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan. Angel.
I want to serve you as mayor, and my administration is going to be based on transparency and communication. Quarterly town halls, bi-weekly report cards from the administration on social media, so you know what's happening. And I gotta tell you, it's not sexy to talk about it, but we cannot cut taxes. That is incredibly foolish to cut taxes when we have an infrastructure that is crumbling as it is. The current administration is trying to do the best that they can with what they have, and I just want to restructure that, but I think it's a fool's errand to cut taxes. It would be dangerous for this town. And with regards to development, local. 19,000 businesses already here by the power of one expanding. Our schools need our connection with our community. Our at-risk populations need our connection as a community. And I'm gonna be at every single social event, every fundraiser. You will be able to access me and talk to me and tell me what you want and need. That's the question I always ask everybody. What do you need? How can I help you get what you need? So August 13th, right around the corner, check the box, vote for me, Angel Castillo.
Thank you, Angel. Mike.
Thank you, Mr. Hunter, and again, I appreciate everybody being here. I'm going to refute a little bit of what Mr. Tavish said. That's not accurate at all. Last 8 years, we put $131 million into infrastructure projects, whether they're roads, sewer, stormwater, culinary water, a water treatment plant. That's something we recognize, and that's something we understand is going to be part of what's happening in the future. Next 30 years, they're estimating that we're going to double our population along the Wasatch Front. And how does that look? Do we want to look like Lehigh? Do we want to look like some of those other areas where it's just a crush of people and traffic and everything else? That's not the Ogden I grew up in. It's not the Ogden I want to live in. We have collectively had conversations about how do we plan for that? How do we do more high-density housing downtown? How do we make it more walkable, bikeable? How do we address public safety? Part of that was we've done 250 homes that we've taken out of the rental pool and put homeowners in, put families in, made these neighborhoods a lot safer. We don't want to be that transient kind of community where people come in and rentals just turn and flip and everything else. We have worked really hard to go in and make some changes in our neighborhoods and create that safe, walkable neighborhood. I completely agree with Angel in that I want nurse at my two brothers that are doctors at McCady, and I want them to be able to go out for a run or go out for a ride or whatever. Part of the reason I rode my bike to work every single day for a year was to promote that kind of sustainable, active transportation and a community that embraces each other. The more we connect with each other, the better we are overall, and that's something I'll continue to do, and I've really tried really hard to do over the last 8 years.
Thank you. I teach my students when they write a paper to make every word fight for its existence. I'd like to congratulate these candidates tonight. We've actually finished this up in less than an hour, and so you would get an A from me if you would. I forgot to recognize Nick Lambert, who is the technical leader for this entire complex here. Now, let me just say one final thing. Several years ago, I remember the story of this sweet little lady who knew all of the candidates, and she went to the ballot box, and she read their names, and she just loved them all. And so, instead of checking any one of the boxes, at the bottom she wrote, "God bless you all." And so we wish each of you best wishes in your pursuits, and thank you for taking the time to run for office in this beautiful city. Thank you all.